The grocery store was almost empty that night, its aisles echoing with the quiet hum of fluorescent lights. Daniel pushed the cart slowly, his eyes tired but focused on his daughter, Emily, who was skipping a few steps ahead. To anyone watching, they would seem like an ordinary father and daughter picking up groceries, but inside Daniel's heart was a storm he never let Emily see. Being a single dad wasn't just about cooking meals, packing lunches, or tucking her in at night. It was about carrying the weight of two parents while constantly worrying if tomorrow would be enough. He worked long hours at construction sites, often skipping his own meals just to make sure Emily never went to bed hungry. And yet, even with all the exhaustion, he found peace in her smile. It was the one thing that reminded him why he had to keep going. Tonight, though, something strange caught his attention. As he unloaded bread, eggs, and a small carton of milk onto the conveyor belt, his eyes wandered to the cashier. She looked young, maybe in her late 20s, but her face carried lines of exhaustion far beyond her age. Her hands trembled as she scanned the items, so much so that she almost dropped the loaf of bread. Daniel frowned at first, thinking it was just fatigue from a long shift, but the way she bit her lip and tried to hide the shaking told him it was something deeper. He watched silently for a few moments, torn between minding his own business and listening to the quiet nudge in his heart that told him not to ignore it. He had been on the other side of that silence before, when people pretended not to notice his pain, when no one asked if he was okay. So he leaned forward, his voice low but gentle. "Hey, are you all right? Why are your hands shaking like that?" The cashier froze. Her eyes darted up, wide and startled, as if no customer had ever asked her something so personal. The hum of the conveyor belt seemed louder now, the store's background noises fading as the world narrowed down to just the two of them. For a long moment, she said nothing, her lips pressed into a thin line. Daniel regretted asking, maybe he had crossed a line. But then, her eyes filled with tears. She quickly blinked away, and she whispered, almost as if confessing a secret. I haven't eaten in 2 days." The words hit Daniel like a punch to the chest. He stood there, speechless, the weight of her truth sinking into him. She explained, her voice shaking more than her hands. She worked 2 jobs, barely slept, and most of the money went to her mother's medication. Rent and bills consumed the rest. She had been skipping meals to stretch every dollar, surviving on coffee and water, until her body began to betray her at work. The trembling wasn't just from exhaustion, it was hunger. Real, gnawing hunger. Daniel's throat tightened. He thought about the times he had skipped meals so Emily wouldn't have to, the nights he lay awake wondering how he would pay the bills. He thought he understood struggle, but hearing her story reminded him that suffering came in many shapes, and some people carried it in silence. Before he could respond, he felt a gentle tug on his sleeve. Emily looked up at him with her big brown eyes, her voice soft but clear. "Daddy, can we give her some of our food?" Tears stung Daniel's eyes. Here was his daughter, who already lived with less than most kids, willing to give away what little they had to help someone else. He swallowed hard and nodded, placing his hand on her shoulder. "Yes, sweetheart. That's exactly what we're going to do." He turned back to the cashier. "Ring up another bag of groceries," he said firmly. "Fill it with what you need, meals, snacks, whatever will keep you going. Don't worry about the cost." The cashier's lips trembled, and she shook her head quickly. I can't let you do that. You have your daughter, you need to take care of her." But Daniel simply smiled, a tired but genuine smile. "We'll be fine. Sometimes the best way to take care of my daughter is to show her what it means to care about others." The silence that followed was heavy with emotion. The cashier tried to protest, but Daniel insisted. In the end, she slowly filled a bag with simple essentials, rice, bread, some canned soup, and fruit. Nothing extravagant, just enough to quiet the hunger that had been gnawing at her. As she handed him the receipt, her hands were still trembling, but this time it wasn't from weakness. It was from gratitude. "You don't know what this means to me," she whispered. I was starting to lose hope. Daniel nodded, his voice low. "I do know. I've been there. And I promise, it doesn't stay this hard forever." That night, as Daniel and Emily walked home carrying their groceries, Emily squeezed his hand and said softly, "Daddy, I want to be like you when I grow up." The words nearly broke him. He wasn't sure if he was a good father or if he was doing enough. But in that moment, he realized that the lessons he taught Emily weren't always about homework or chores. They were about compassion, about seeing people's pain, about being the kind of person who lifts others up when they're falling. The following week, Daniel and Emily returned to the grocery store. The cashier, now a little stronger and steadier, greeted them with a smile that carried more light than before. She wasn't cured of her struggles overnight, but that one act of kindness had reminded her that she wasn't invisible, that someone cared enough to notice. And sometimes, that reminder was enough to keep fighting. Daniel learned something too, that even in his own hardships, he had the power to change someone else's life. And as he tucked Emily into bed that night, he whispered a silent prayer of gratitude. Not for the struggles, but for the strength to endure them. For the chance to teach his daughter that kindness could be the greatest legacy he left behind. Because in the end, life isn't just about surviving your battles. It's about reaching out, even with empty hands, and reminding someone else that they're not alone in theirs.